friends, and welcome to the quarterly review, aka every book that I've read so far this year. Buckle up. Hi friends, my name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. Today is a very good day. It's sunny, it's bright, it's beautiful. It feels like summer is like on the cusp. You know what I mean? Like it's just like waiting there in, what is the word? It's almost here. And I'm in a really good mood because of that. But I realized that I haven't done any recent reads, monthly wrap-ups, or quarterly wrap-ups, and I really want to do that. I was actually supposed to do this like before April hit. So we have slightly more books than I was anticipating reviewing, but I'm really excited about it and I can't wait to talk about all the books that I've read this year. So I've recently switched over to Storygraph. I do still have a Goodreads, but I've been using Storygraph because they have cute little pie charts, and I don't know why, but I think that's so fun. So far this year, I have read 23 books, technically 24, but one was a DNF, like a hard DNF. And I have read 6,429 pages. It looks like if I'm basing everything off of this little pie chart, my main mood that I reach for is reflective, dark, emotional, and funny. And I do quite like funny books. So I'm sorry. I wish the funny was like bigger. 57% of the books that I've read are less than 300 pages. 39% are between 300 and 500 pages, and 4% are over 500 pages long. And that's it as far as the pie charts, but aren't those so fun? I broke everything down by genre. So far this year, I have read 7 literary fictions. One was a DNF, Rest in Peace, Mrs. S. by K. Patrick. No. One was a contemporary, one was a horror book. I've read 2 nonfictions, 2 poetry collections, 2 short story collections, 3 translated works, I think, 6 fantasy books, and 1 DNF. I also have my top favorites and my top least favorites, but I will get to that at the end of the video. Okay, let's jump in with some quick overall summaries and things of the books. So let's start with the only book that I DNF'd, and that is Mrs. S by K. Patrick. This is, you know what? I DNF'd this really quick. It's about a girl who goes to this all-girl boarding school, and she is supposed to be like a matron for the girls. I don't even know what that means. And then she is supposed to fall in love with the headmistress's wife, or no, the headmaster's wife. Yes, but I'm gonna be honest with you, it was really boring and I don't plan on picking it back up. I'm so sorry. Next up, I read Poor Things. This is by Alistair Gray. I read this because I really wanted to watch the movie. And now that I've read this, I'm like, am I gonna like the movie? I don't know. I thought this was really interesting. I think some of the more interesting things and parts about this book happen at the end, and I don't want to spoil this for anyone. So it's gonna be kind of hard explaining why I thought this was so brilliant. The book is following Bella Baxter. Bella Baxter has essentially been like brought back to life by her creator, who goes by God. And God, he basically saved Bella. So it was a woman who was taking her own life. It's really complicated, and he basically brings her back, but he doesn't really bring her back because he puts, now this is where it gets weird. He puts the brain of the baby that she was pregnant with in her brain after she dies. And as I'm saying this, I know it sounds really weird. It is a really weird concept. Think Renesmee from Twilight. She is born a full-grown woman with the brain of a baby, but then she progresses really quickly, just like Renesmee from Twilight. So eventually she catches up to her body's age very fast. The book has a lot of commentary. It has a lot of really interesting commentary. All you need to know is that it's a very quirky and odd book. I thought that it's commentary on women and sex and society and the problems with society and unreliable narrators and unreliable characters. Like, I just thought that it did a lot that was really interesting and unique. I also felt like the format of this was really interesting and unique. It's like a book within a book, within letters, and everything is like tied together, and then everything is flipped upside down when you get to the end of the book. It was interesting, it was fun to read, and I'm glad I read it. Like, it was weird, but I like weird. Next up, I read one of my favorite books of the year, Big Swiss. This is by Jen Beacon. I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. And it's really funny. It's about Greta, and Greta is an older woman who is living with her roommate Sabine in New York, not like New York City, but like in upstate New York, I believe. Her job is to transcribe these sessions from a sex therapist. She ends up kind of developing feelings for a client who she has called Big Swiss. She's really interested in like the way she speaks and in how she's picturing her mannerisms to be. And then one day she meets Big Swiss at a dog park. It's about the ethics of like her wanting to get to know this woman, but also knowing intimate details about everything about her that really she shouldn't know. And it's just interesting. It's a book that explores trauma and past relationships and ethics, morality. It's quirky, it's funny, it's messy. Every single character in here is unlikable, but it's done in a really interesting way. I loved it. Highly recommend the audio. I thought it was great. 5 stars. Next up, we have another 5-star book. This I think is going to be in my top 10 of the year. It's called Less. It's by Andrew Sean Greer. It won the Pulitzer Prize, and I can absolutely see why. I thought it was just wonderful. This book is following Arthur Less. Arthur Less has just ended sort of like a situationship kind of. His ex-boyfriend, sort of, I don't know even if they were official, but he is getting married and he invites Arthur to the wedding, which is an odd choice. And Arthur doesn't want to go to the wedding. He does not want to see his ex-situationship who he thinks he's in love with. And so he decides instead to say yes, basically, to all of these different writers' conferences. And he travels around the world and he basically says like, I can't go to your wedding. I'm sorry. I'm like slammed with work. It's wonderful. It's about him going to all of these different countries. It's funny. It tackles a lot of really interesting topics like ageism and feeling like you're a failure and past love and moving on. What makes and defines a good relationship versus a failed relationship. It's really funny, which I really appreciate. I love it when books are funny. I also felt like it was very sharp, very poignant. The writing was really great, and it had a great mix between humor and sadness and tragedy. And I, again, 5 stars, highly recommend this book. I just thought it was great. The next book that I read that is a literary fiction is Fruit of the Dead, and this is by Rachel Lyon. This is a Persephone's retelling, but it's not so much Hades and Persephone as much as it is focusing on Persephone and her mom Demeter. I don't know if you're familiar with the original Greek tale of Persephone, but essentially people view it in one of 2 ways. They either view it as a romance or they view it as like a tragedy. The goddess Demeter was completely obsessed and totally loved her daughter Persephone, who was supposed to be absolutely stunning and beautiful, and they were very close. And then one day, the god Hades, who ruled the underworld, saw Persephone, fell in love with her, and kidnapped her and stole her away. Demeter knew that he was more powerful than her, and so she couldn't steal her daughter back, but she begged instead, please, I love my daughter, please let me see her. And so Hades struck a deal and was like, well, she's gonna be queen of the underworld now, but for a season she can come up. And when she comes up, that's when we have spring, because Demeter is so happy that she gets her daughter back that all of the flowers bloom. Some people see that as really romantic because they see it as like, you know, Hades and Persephone were true loves and soulmates. And then half of the people say that's so tragic. She was literally kidnapped from her mom. And this has the perspective of that's so tragic. She was kidnapped from her mom. We're following Corey, and Corey is a camp counselor. Corey's a little lost. She just turned 18. She just turned 18. So it's gross. Everything that's gonna happen to her, I think, is gross. But Corey just turned 18 and she has just graduated high school. She's a little lost. She has not been accepted at any of the universities she wanted to go to. And while she is at this camp, one of the kids that she looked after, his father comes in, and his father is supposed to be like this mega billionaire, CEO of this company, owns his own island or like several of his own islands, and he definitely represents Hades. He is completely smitten with Corey immediately, and Corey is quite drawn to him, but she doesn't know at what capacity. She doesn't know if she's sexually attracted to him or if she's just drawn to him because he's this very big, powerful man. But he basically says, I will give you an internship. Really, you're just gonna be the nanny to my kids, but you can spend the summer basically, or the rest of the summer, on my private island. The catch is though, you have to sign an NDA and no one can know where you are because I'm a big, powerful big shot. I hate him. I don't know if you can tell. Corey, who is very lost, basically says yes. She goes to his island, and then she tells her mom, I have accepted an internship. Don't worry about me, but I can't tell you anything else because I signed an NDA. Her mom, rightfully so, starts freaking out. She's like, excuse me, what the do you mean you're leaving for an internship and I can't know where you are, who you're, like, you're 18, Corey, what is going on? Corey is at that age where she really just wants to make her own way in life, and her mom is a little bit restrictive. And so it's about her making lots of mistakes on this island with this man who is gross, who I don't like. And it's about the heartbreak of her mom trying to find her daughter, knowing something is wrong, something is not right. It also has a lot of commentary, I think, on like big pharma, on like pharmaceutical medicines, even if something is legal, to what extent is it maybe not ethical to like push on the public. It's interesting. Like, I think it did a lot. I did not give away the ending, by the way. There is so much in this book that is worth diving into. But yeah, if you're interested in like a mom-daughter relationship, if you're interested in a Greek mythology retelling, if you're interested in power dynamics, some commentary on pharmaceuticals and the pharmaceutical industry, I think this did a lot, besties, and I think it did it well. I will say that is not a happy time, okay? Think dark Vanessa vibes. I'm talking sad. You're gonna be sad. Next up was a book called Greta and Balden, and this is by Rebecca K. Riley. Stunning cover, absolutely beautiful cover, right? Greta and Balden is a queer duo perspective between two siblings, Greta and Balden. They are both roommates. Greta is currently, I think, getting her, is it her PhD? She's getting something. I don't know if it's her master's or PhD at university. And Balden is working full-time. They're best friends. They're very, very close. And Balden has just broken up, I think a little while ago, with who he thinks was the love of his life, and he's trying to get over that guy. And Greta is trying to get over an unrequited crush. It's about their relationship. It's about their relationships with each other, with their family, with their heritage, and also with the people that they are falling in and out of love with. I don't think I connected to this book as much as I really hoped I would. I just didn't like either of the characters, and while I read a lot of books with unlikable characters, I feel like at least the characters are typically interesting, but I thought both of these were a little bit boring for me. And I also just really, don't pick this book up if you don't like the miscommunication trope, because we use that trope again and again and again in this book, and it's so frustrating. It was just unfortunately not for me, but I am keeping it because like the cover, once again, 10 out of 10, okay? The very last book in the literary fiction category is gonna be The Dutch House, and this is by Ann Patchett. Beautiful cover. I just think this is gorgeous. This is another book that is kind of exploring sibling dynamics between two different people, a brother and a sister. They grow up in this big, beautiful mansion called The Dutch House. They grow up very privileged. Their mom ends up leaving them. Also, all this is on the flap, okay? So I promise I'm not giving anything away. That's not on the summary. But basically, the book is following them after a really tragic event happens, which is listed on the flap, and it is that their father remarries a woman, then he dies, and then the new wife kicks them out of their home, and basically they're just like out on their own. I would say that I felt like the most interesting part of this book was the premise. It's what I just said. I was going into the book really hoping for a slightly different tone and a slightly different story. I want a revenge. Can I just be real? I want a revenge, and I wanted it to be sweet. That's not really the point of this book. The book is really exploring nostalgia and how sometimes looking back on the past can haunt you in a bad way. I personally don't think that I enjoyed the ending. The ending really upset me. Like, I was crying a lot, but not like a good cry, like I was frustrated. So I think that this book is really a character study. A lot of people are going to love it, and I think there's going to be a percentage of people who maybe don't love it as much. I don't think I loved it as much, but I can definitely tell you that I will be picking up many more Ann Patchett books because as a writer, phenomenal. Her writing was beautiful. Even though I didn't connect to the ending as much, and I kind of fell out of love with the characters as the story progressed, I still loved her writing. And that's it for literary fiction. Now let's move on to contemporary. I've only read one adult contemporary this year, and that is Bad Summer People, and this is by Emma Rosenblum. I just finished this, actually. I was reading it for an exclusive readathon with my Patreon members, and I read this for beach read or like vacation read. I love this book. This is a solid 5-star. It was amazing. Listen, can I tell you a secret? I just love a good, fun book. I love something funny. I love something messy. I love it when a book can take me out of my head. I don't care necessarily if it's a fantasy, literary fiction, contemporary, a thriller, a horror. If it can make me turn off my brain and just delight me in some way, make me scared, make me happy, spike my adrenaline, make me laugh, it's gonna get 5 stars from me. And that's what this book did. The book is following a plethora of people. It's not just like one perspective or 4, I mean, we're talking like a whole town, basically. Every single chapter is a different person. Sometimes I think that can be really confusing, but the author is so good at writing that she completely pulled it off. It felt like I was just watching an HBO dramedy. So we're following a group of really, really rich, swanky people who go to an island for the summer, and the island's called Fire Island. It's off of the coast, I wanna say, of like Long Island. And we're just following the really twisted things that happen on this island. There are so many scandals, but like it's done in a really lighthearted, funny way. It was messy. I could not read this fast enough. I think I finished this within like 24 hours or something. I loved it. I thought it was great. If you're looking for a book to make you laugh, to really engage you, and maybe that would be perfect for a beach read, it's Bad Summer People. 5 stars. Loved it. Now let's move on to the only horror / like thrillery book that I read this year, and that is gonna be Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. I picked this up because I saw this on Riley Marie's channel, and I'm really glad I picked it up. It's following a woman named Ro, or Rosemary. She has just broken up with her long-term boyfriend, Eric, and she is, I think, a professor at like this little community college in this tiny, sleepy town. She goes to a market one day and she is struck by this beautiful, beautiful presence of a woman named Ash. She completely falls head over heels in love with Ash, and it's about how they meet at this beautiful little magical market and how Ro is looking for some magic in her life, and it seems like Ash is gonna provide that, but then sinister, weird stuff starts to happen. I'm not gonna say anything else. It's so short. I don't wanna give anything away. I will say that the majority of this was very suspenseful, and then at the end we go full horror, okay? We go from like 0 to 100 real quick. It is disgusting. It's disgusting, it's disturbing, it's tragic. I think for a horror though, it did everything that it was supposed to do, and I think it did it really, really well. I thought it was unique and interesting, and yeah, I recommend it. If you're looking for a short little horror novella, I thought it was good. Okay, next let's move on to the 2 nonfictions that I read. The first one, technically I think was Wintering, and this is by Katherine May. This is a book all about the importance basically of rest and relaxation and hibernation during the winter. It's talking about how a lot of the times in society, we as people kind of feel like we have to be productive all of the time. And the author really breaks things down into seasons, and she's like, you know, trees are in full bloom and everything in the summertime, but they die in the winter, and it's because they're taking care of themselves. You can't force a tree to bloom and give you fruit in the winter. Like, that just doesn't happen, and it's not the tree's fault. It's because it's literally winter. And then she goes on to explain how in today's world and in today's society, we're just expected to always be producing our best. That's not always possible, and how we're not always nice to ourselves when we're going through our own wintering period. The way she explains depression and wintering and grieving and taking care of yourself and rest and relaxation and the guilt that comes when you don't have time to do that, or when you financially can't afford to take off time. It was really well explained, and it was really well done. This was recommended to me by a subscriber, I think years ago. This is the first winter that I actually read this. I read this at a time I really, really needed to read this. It was winter, I was peak sad, I was moving, I was really questioning a lot going on in my life, and I recommend it. Like, I felt like this book was like a warm blanket and like a friend when I needed a friend. And then the other nonfiction that I read is called The Art Thief, and this is by Michael Finkel. This book is following the true tales of an art thief named Stefan, and he ended up stealing over 200 pieces of art in broad daylight from a variety of museums. And I think his personal collection was worth like over $2 billion. The book is following kind of like how he did it, why he started, and the lives impacted from this art thievery. I thought it was interesting. I think that Michael Finkel did a great job at really like showcasing Stefan as a person and all of his flaws, but also like maybe why he started. It was just really interesting. I thought it was good. I don't read a lot of nonfiction, and I have to say I really felt out of love with Stefan towards the end. In the beginning, he really romanticizes his love of art. You sympathize with him a lot, right? But then towards the end, he got on my nerves, he did. Now let's go ahead and move on to poetry and also short story collections. I'm gonna put these together. I ended up reading 2 poetry collections this year. The first one is The Orange, and this is by Winnie Cope. Love this. This is a very like whimsical, short little collection. The Orange is probably my favorite out of this collection. It's all about basically celebrating the mundane moments of life and how precious just even sharing a slice of orange with your friends can be, and how the best parts of living are often the smallest, most simple, beautiful day-to-day moments. It's very like whimsical. Every poem rhymes, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really sweet and simple, and I really, really enjoyed the collection a lot. I also think it's very pretty. The other one I read is by Emily Berry, and this is Unexhausted Time. This collection is a little bit more surreal. I really enjoyed it. The collection itself kind of feels like you're almost diving into Emily Berry's personal dreams. We see a lot of metaphors and symbols that are repeated throughout very specific poems. Like I think there's one, I wanna say it's like about a bird, and the bird shows up in multiple poems, and the bird almost seems like it's from a dream. It's really interesting. I thought that a lot of these poems had a lot of really, really beautiful phrases. Like if you read some of these melodically, they sound really, really good together when reading out loud. I think my favorite poem was the one that starts, "To write a poem, you must fall in love." And I also really enjoyed House. I liked Mother a lot too, I think. And then I read 2 short story collections. The first one was What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. I think my favorite short story in this is actually the one that is What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. I love Raymond Carver. I thought that this was so good. This was such a strong collection. Every single short story in here was so well done. It was so well edited. It was sharp and to the point and interesting. I just think as a short story author or writer, he's just so great. He really is. I really enjoyed it a lot. Highly recommend What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, the short story and the collection. And then the last short story collection that I read is Bliss Montage. This is by Ling Ma. This was really good. This was really, really good. I read it during a time when I was kind of going into a reading slump. I wish I had put it down and picked it back up. I think I would have given it like a solid 5 stars. Because I was reading it during a time when I really should have taken a break from reading, I think personal enjoyment wise, I only gave it 4. But truly, the writing of this is 5 stars. The author explores a variety of topics. She explores her Asian heritage, mother-daughter relationships, toxic and abusive relationships with an ex-boyfriend, with a toxic friend. So there's a lot of different topics and subjects, but somehow Ling Ma does a great job at making everything feel really cohesive. Some of the things in here are very surreal, and some are a little bit more straightforward. I think my favorite, I really liked Peking Duck. I feel like I'm saying that wrong, but that one. I loved Tomorrow. I thought that one was really good. Los Angeles was good. I loved G. I thought G was really interesting. I don't know, basically all of them. I thought they were all really strong. This is a great collection. Highly recommend it. Now, let's go on to translated fiction. Okay, I had to pause. I had to pause because my camera died, so I had to charge my battery super quick, but I think I was talking about translated works. They are all literary fiction as far as I can tell, and I'll try to tell you like the country that it was originally published in and the language as well. So the first one is Dogs of Summer, and this is by Andrea Abreu. I don't know. Please feel free to just completely correct me because I don't actually know how to pronounce this name. And it was originally published, I believe, in Spanish, and it was published in Spain, and the translator is Julia Sanchez. The book is stunning. The book is a 5 out of 5. It is a very adult book, okay? And it's following 2 perspectives, 2 young girls who become friends. The book is following them one summer as they are battling the question of, do I want to be you or do I want to be with you? The love is very blurred between them. They don't know if they love each other as best friends or if they love each other as more. It's also exploring a lot of really tragic things that happened to them this summer. It's a very adult, emotional, intense read. It's beautiful. It's very well written. I think that the translation is phenomenal. It's just so good. It's funny, it's sad, it's poignant. I just thought it was was really good. I think it did a great job at capturing girlhood. 5 stars. The next one is one of my favorite books of the year. One of my favorite books of the year, translated from French, originally published, I believe, in France. My Husband by Maud Ventura, and the translation is by Emma Ramadan. Beautiful, beautiful book in every single way. I mean, first of all, cover, stunning. One of the most beautiful books I've ever laid my whole eyes. The book is following a wife who is obsessed with her husband, and like, we've all been there, girl. Well, I mean, not necessarily obsessed with our husbands, but just, you know what it's like. When you're in love, your brain is weird. And I feel like this book really captures that. The book is following a 40-something-year-old woman who is beautiful. Her whole life revolves around if her husband has paid attention to her during that day. Now, I really like this book for a variety of reasons. Number one, it takes place in the span of a week. And I feel like in the span of a week, we really get to know the character and how she thinks in such a phenomenal way. I mean, if you love characterization, like if you love studying characters and how their personalities work and things like that, you're gonna love this book. It's just very, very well done. We're following these mundane, everyday moments, but somehow she makes every moment relatable and unrelatable in very interesting ways. She essentially puts her husband through a variety of like invisible tests. If he, for example, doesn't hold her hand at the end of the day, if he goes to sleep without saying I love you, if he says love you instead of I love you, just in the ways that he communicates, she sort of gauges his love in these little micro details. As you're reading it at first, you're like, this lady's a little much. And then she kind of makes some compelling arguments. You have to kind of stop and almost examine your own relationship with love and go, oh, wait a minute, don't I do that kind of? If this person doesn't respond to me in this time period, I don't think that they like me. Or if they say these things instead of these things, they clearly also don't like. So the more you read, the more at first you're like, that's a bit much. And then you're like, wait a second, I kind of do that too. And it was just really, really interesting. Obviously it's fiction, so it's gonna be stretched a lot more because it's fiction. But I just thought that it was really good. And I really enjoyed discussing this with my mom. My mother is hilarious. Without any spoilers about like the book or anything, there's one point in the book where she's talking about how she and her husband are having dinner with their 2 friends who are also a couple. They're all comparing each other to fruit. This woman's husband compares her, he's like, I think your friend would be a pineapple and I think you would be a clementine. She gets so pissed off that he calls her a little clementine. I didn't get it while I was reading it. I was like, I love clementines. Like, I'm very confused. Why is she so pissed off? And I told that to my mom. I was like, Mom, she's really pissed off because her husband called her best friend a pineapple. And my mom was like, well, what did he call her? And I was like, well, he said she's a clementine. And without missing a beat, my mom goes, that bastard. Read this book and then discuss it with your mom. And then the next book, unfortunately, was a little bit of a miss for me. It's called Thirst. It's by Mariana Usick. I don't know how to pronounce it. The translator was Heather Cleary. I don't know if maybe it was lost in translation or if I just did not connect to this. I think it's the plot though. The flap says across 2 different time periods, 2 women, 1 vampire, 1 mortal, confront a yearning that will not let them rest. And I have to say, what yearning? Like, I'm very, like, I don't know if maybe I misinterpreted it, but I thought it was gonna be more like they met and they were just connected and they needed each other, and it was gonna be a literary kind of romance between a vampire and this woman, and that's not what it was at all. Really, the first part is just this woman explaining her origins on how she became a vampire and all of her relationships and things. But it has nothing to do with this lady, and to be honest, I thought it was really, really boring. The second half is more following this woman as she's grappling with her mother's declining health and what it's like to be a single parent. And again, like, it wasn't bad, but I just didn't find her as a character fascinating. I think it could have been done in an interesting way, but to me, I just felt like the writing was very boring and I didn't feel connected to either of the characters. I think if it sounds good to you, pick it up, you know, because not everyone is gonna be for every book. This just didn't work for me, that's okay. And then finally, let's end with the biggest category, which are the fantasy books. Or actually, I think this is the second biggest. I think we have 6. Yes. Okie dokie, here are the fantasy books here. Let's start off with This Poison Heart. This is by Kaitlyn Bayron. This was a Patreon book club pick. I'm so glad that we picked this. It was wonderful. This book is following Bree. Bree mysteriously inherits a mansion in upstate New York, and she goes with her two moms and they go to kind of check it out. And while she's there, she learns more about her family, her grandma, and also about herself. She has an ability to make plants grow. It's kind of like her magical power, I guess. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the random bits of Greek mythology sprinkled in. I enjoyed the mystery. I enjoyed the characters. I thought this was really funny. I thought it was really intriguing. I think it's duology. I will be picking up the second book. I really liked it, and most of my patrons liked it too. That was a really fun live show. Highly recommend. Next up, I started the ACOTAR series, I think years and years ago, you guys. When this first came out, I read this, did not remember a single thing about it, so I decided to reread it. I just think this is fun. This is really fun, and I'm glad I read it. I'm reading this for a vlog, actually. I have to say, like, very good. I think this one would get 4 stars. The second book in the series would get 5 solid, I mean, maybe even 6 stars. I thought it was so good. The book is following Feyre. Feyre is immortal. Feyre accidentally shoots what she thinks is an animal, and it's really like a fairy in disguise. She has to go live with a guy named Tamlin, who is a fae, and yeah, things happen from there. It's a steamy, fun time. Next up, I did a reread, one reread of the year, and that was Nalan Bone by T. Kingfisher. I read this with my patrons for a book club. 5 out of 5. I think this made my top favorite books the year that I read it, which was it 2 years ago? Love this book so much. T. Kingfisher just is phenomenal, so phenomenal. The book is following Mara. Mara has to rescue her sister, who is in a marriage with an evil prince. And along the way, she gets help from like her fairy godmother, from a graveyard bone witch, from a knight in shining armor, from a magical companion. Like, it's great. It's so great. It takes a lot of tropes of fairy tales, flips them on their head, makes them really, really funny. There are some more serious topics in this, so please check trigger warnings because parts of it are sad. Then we read The Ogress and the Orphans by Kelly Barnhill for our middle grade book club. How is my camera battery almost dead? I literally just charged it. That is wild. This is about a group of orphans and an ogress. It's following on this little town, and the town, they don't really get along. They don't really speak to each other. They're very like secretive, weird little people. They're not really getting along with each other, and no one is funding this orphanage. So these orphans are really scared that they're basically going to be turned out onto the street. And it's about their relationship with the ogress. The ogress really wants to help these people in the town. It has a lot of really fun commentary on what it's like to be a good neighbor and a good person and a good friend. And I thought it was really sweet. It was very well written. Kelly Barnhill is wonderful at creating really beautiful and poignant stories for young readers. Thought it was great. Just know though, when you read it, you'll be frustrated and sad, but it will be a phenomenal story. And then finally, the last book in this category is going to be Assistant to the Villain, and this is by Hannah Nicole Meyer. This again was a Patreon book club pick. I thought it started off really funny, and then towards the end, I didn't love it quite as much, but I am glad that I read it because I thought that the premise was really fun, and I did enjoy reading it. So we're following Evie, and Evie needs a job. She ends up kind of like falling into this job to be the assistant to a villain. I don't want to give too much more away. It's just about their relationship. It's like there's all of these different plots on top of plots, and I don't know what would be a spoiler and what wouldn't be, because I read this kind of more at the beginning of the year. But just think like fun, campy vibes, okay? Like go into this if you want a silly, fun time. There's no steam in here or anything, so if you're looking for like a Fade to Black romance, something more silly and lighthearted, I think you'd like this. I thought that the villain was really funny. I thought Evie was nice too, although she kind of got on my nerves a little bit towards the end. Yeah, I thought it was good. I don't think it is like a new all-time favorite. I'd probably give it more like 3 stars, but I'm still really glad that I read it. Parts of it didn't work towards the end, but overall, I just thought it was fun. So yeah. And there you have it, you guys. Those are all of the books that I've read so far this year. I'll give you like a top favorites and then a top 3 that like I didn't love. My top 3 that I didn't love would definitely be Mrs. S. Didn't even finish this one. The Dutch House, unfortunately, but that's okay. And then Greta and Balden. And then luckily I found so many favorite books that I could narrow it down. So my top 5 favorites of the year so far are Less, Bad Summer People, My Husband, Big Swiss, and the second book in the ACOTAR series. My camera battery is literally dead. My camera battery has died for like the 3rd time. I don't know what's happening. But I'm gonna conclude this super quick just in case it dies for yep, it's dying. Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much for watching. I had so much fun kind of rehashing all of the reviews for the year so far. I found quite a few books that I really, really loved, and I'm excited. I'm invigorated, if you will. I'm excited to see what is coming next. So my question of the day for all of you though is, what is your favorite and least favorite book of the year? Please let me know down below in the comments. And if you've made it to this point of the video, please leave me, oh, that little smiley face with the sunglasses. A huge thank you to all of my members at Fox and Wood, which is my Patreon account. If you are interested in more content or different ways to support me, I will leave the links for that down below. That really helps me out, and I am so thankful for every single one of my members over there. And a big thank you to the Ink and Quill Club members, who are all executive producers of every single video that I create. I love you guys so much, and until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book, and I will chat to you very soon. Bye!